People ask us how we get plants to grow so well. The answer is simple, a fertile soil.
How did we learn to have a fertile soil? The answer to that is simple, too. You just have to know where to look. I'm Barbara Damrosch.
And I'm Eliot Coleman. Stick with us for the next half hour, and we'll show you how to make a fertile soil on Gardening Naturally. Nature grows far more crops than people do. When Barbara and I want to know how to do something really well, we come and ask the experts. And in this case, the experts are all the natural systems that exist in undisturbed wild land.
The most important thing for a gardener to learn is how to create great soil. So we're here in the woods to study nature's own soil program.
The nicest thing about the natural systems is that nothing is wasted. There are trees up above here that drop their leaves, and the residues of one year become the raw materials for the next. And so the newer material is on top, and then as you go down, it's already decomposing and becoming part of the fertility of the soil.
And none of this ever gets disturbed. Nobody comes in with a rototiller, turns over the soil. Everything's doing just fine the way it is.
And that's because there are billions of organisms, earthworms, beneficial soil insects, and microorganisms that are working in here constantly, creating the structure, the aeration, and all the things that the roots in here need in order to grow well. In fact, a fertile soil is so alive that studies have shown that a mere teaspoonful contains at least 1 million active soil microorganisms.
How do we apply these lessons to our own garden? Let's go back and take a look.
Just like on the forest floor, organic matter is the fuel that powers this garden system.
Now you can see that this doesn't look much like the forest floor here. Here's a bare piece of ground where we just harvested something. The major difference between the forest and here is that the organic matter that's produced isn't allowed to slowly decompose back into the earth. We harvest it, eat the vegetables. We take it away.
Now, we don't take everything away. There are many parts of the vegetables, like these old wilted pea vines or this old cabbage leaf, or even the remains of this mulch, that we can use to add back to the soil. But in the form they're in there, they're not quite ready to feed plants. They need to go through the compost heap.
The compost heap being a big pile of decomposing matter that we make use of. This is a bucket of our #1 grade A compost.
Beautiful stuff.
Now we're going to teach you A to Z about how to make your own fine compost.
But first off, let's use it. All you got to do is pick it up, spread it on the soil as much as you can make, and mix it in. Mix it in shallowly into the surface of the soil. You don't need to put it down deeply. All those insects we talked about, all the earthworms, soil insects, microorganisms, that's their work. They're going to put that in there and make the soil fertile. So the key to this is to remember the simple rule. Feed the soil, and the soil will feed the plants. Now, there's one more soil food we need to talk about, and that's minerals.
Now, one mineral is getting taken care of right here in these old clamshells that we've left in the soil. They're gradually releasing calcium into it. But if you come with us, we're going to show you some other ways of putting mineral nutrients back into your soil.
The trees that grow well in the forest are those whose mineral needs are best met by what that soil has to offer. What you want to do in the home garden is make sure you have covered the mineral needs of any plant you might want to grow.
Now, a minute ago, I talked about making sure calcium was in your soil by adding clamshells. But it may not be convenient for you to bring an awful lot of clams into your garden. There's a simpler way to do it. Just add lime. Now, you probably think of lime as an antidote to soil acidity. Well, it is, but it's also a great source of calcium and magnesium, both very important minerals for your soil. If your soil is very alkaline, of course, you don't want to add a lot of lime. Try using gypsum as a source of calcium instead.
Now, in most cases, the other mineral needs of your plants are taken care of by plenty of good compost. But there's a just in case here. And there are two soil amendments that Barbara and I use sort of as a garden insurance policy. They are both ground rock minerals, just like the limestone. This is phosphate rock, a good source of phosphorus, and this is green sand, a source of potassium and any other mineral. Now, these things may seem a little expensive at first, but when you put them on, they're good for about 4 years, and I only apply them once every 4 years. That's pretty economical.
Now, how do you know whether you're going to need any of these things? A good way to find out is to have a soil test done. It's very simple. You can go to your cooperative extension service or your land-grant university, and they'll give you a little plastic mailer, and you go around your property and take representative samples of your soil, put them in the bag, mail them off, and they'll send you back a computer printout that tells you about your soil.
Now, very often that computer printout will look like the report card you got when you flunked 3rd grade. But don't be too concerned about it. Just pay attention to what it says about the minerals that are missing. And very often, the university will give you a recommendation of what needs to be added to your soil in order to make up the missing nutrients. Be sure and ask them, in your case, for a recommendation for organic fertilizers.
Don't think of this as too scientific or complicated a process. It's an awful lot like making a great stew. If you're using organic materials, the more you put in, the better it's going to be.
Now, there's one more consideration, though. No matter how good you get it, how fertile you get your garden, if the soil is too compacted, it still won't work well. And we're going to deal with that next. There are 2 reasons why the soil in the forest doesn't become compacted. First, nobody walks on it. In order to duplicate that in the garden, we try and confine our foot traffic to the paths between the growing beds.
A lot of people think that we have raised beds in our garden, but actually all we have is trodden paths.
And the second reason is roots. The plants in the forest are perennials. That is, they're there year after year, and they have a much more extensive root system which opens and aerates the soil. The plants in your garden are mostly annuals, 1-year plants, and don't have anywhere near the root system to do that job. And so we use a mechanical technique to make up for that. I'd call it soil aeration. You can do it with a garden fork. Just poke it into the ground, pull back on the handle, just lift and loosen. You're not turning the soil, you're just putting air in underneath. And if this works well for you and you like the technique or have a bigger garden, you might try another tool. This is called a broad fork, and it's designed specifically for this job. Push in, pull back, lift, and loosen. It's nice exercise and very effective.
When you're learning from nature, you start to think like a plant. I'll give you an example of what I mean. Pretend that the fingers on your hands are the roots of plants. Stick them into your soil, wiggle it around. Is it easy to do? If it is, the plant is going to like it too, and you have good soil for growing things.
And those are the secrets to soil fertility: organic matter, adequate minerals, and plenty of air for your plant's roots.
You've probably heard or read about nitrogen fixation, and I'm going to give you a close look at how this actually works. Now, the family of plants called the legumes, this includes peas, beans, and some very important cover crops such as clover and alfalfa. These have a special relationship with the bacteria that enables them to store nitrogen on nodules on their roots. Let's look at how this happens. I'm going to pull the crop, which is finished growing anyway. I want you to look at these little white bumps on the roots. That's where the nitrogen is. So what I'm going to do is keep those roots in the soil. We're going to put the vines on the compost heap, but I'm going to cut them at ground level and leave that good nitrogen in the soil for the next crop.
Okay, folks, what if I told you I had a fantastic soil amendment here? The best thing that ever happened to your garden. Something that would take a heavy clay soil and lighten it up. Something that would take a light, sandy soil and give body to it. Something that would make everything in your garden grow better than it ever did before. What would you pay for it? Well, I do have such a product, and it's free. It's called compost. What is compost? Well, remember the forest floor? Remember how all the residues of the natural system fall down and are slowly turned into a fertilizer for next year's growth? The same thing can happen in your garden. You take the residues of the flowers the residues of the vegetables, put them in what's called a compost heap, and they turn into something like this. How does that happen, and how do you do it, and what are the ingredients? Come on with me, and we'll show you how. Hi, Barbara. Looks like you got plenty of stuff for the compost heap.
Oh, yeah, our garden cleanup today gave us lots of good stuff for the compost heap. Yeah, I pulled out all those flowers that the frost got, and we got the corn stalks all pulled up, and I just got the bean vines in here, and pea vines, and tomato vines, and we're all set. Now, most of the stuff can just go right into the compost heap, just the way it is. Just pile it in there. No problem. Well, we got some big, heavy stuff here today. These corn stalks are not only too long to go in as is, they're very dense. They're not going to decompose very fast. And all of these cabbage roots, Eliot, we're going to have to smash those up a bit.
Yep. One way of dealing with things that are hard to break down in the heap is to break up the fibers in there. The simplest way to do that, set them on a stump like this, and just hit them with the back of the axe. And you notice that opens up the fibers in there. And if you open up the fibers, then the microorganisms that decompose it can get in there and break it down, and you won't have any problem. The same with these corn stalks. The stalks might rot easily, but this end, the root, is really hard, and I can help that break down, again, by just a couple of blows with the axe to soften that up and let it break apart easier. If they're too long, I can just take this little machete and just quickly put it into smaller pieces that would decompose very easily. Now, many people might want to do that with a shredder. I suppose that's just as good, but this is a very, very functional way of doing it. The next thing, of course, is to get them into the compost heap.
When I'm making compost, I sometimes feel like I'm making a lasagna. The ingredients don't go in just any old way. They go in layers. Now, the stuff that I'm putting in right now, the tomato vines and the peas and the cabbage leaves and these kitchen scraps, these are all what I consider moist green ingredients. So we're making a layer of that. But after that, we're going to need a layer of brown, dry ingredients to go on top. Eliot, do we have any brown and dry?
We sure do, Barbara.
Great.
The corn stalks that I just chopped up, they're dry brown ingredient. Maybe some of the straw from this pile here, or the beans that you had over there.
All right.
The reason you need a blend in a compost heap is for the same reason there's a blend on the forest floor. Different ingredients make the best compost in the long run, and also, if you have too much wet, moist, green ingredients in there, the heap will smell. If you have only dry brown ingredients, the heap will be too dry and it won't break down. But the combination of the two, aha, now we're cooking.
Yeah, think of the brown, dry ingredients as the lasagna noodles, and then the moist green stuff that goes in between as the filling.
Absolutely. Now you can see from the pile of materials we have here that we're going to fill this heap up pretty quickly. This is a wonderful heap for the small yard, but if you like to make a lot of compost and have a lot of ingredients, you're going to need a larger area in which to put them. We're going to show you some other options for making compost on a larger scale. There are two things to look for when choosing a compost container. First, it wants to be strong enough to hold the ingredients, and second, it wants to let some air enter through the sides.
My dad had a nice, simple system for making compost. He'd take a piece of snow fence like this and just make a circle out of it. It was easy to put together, and plenty of air got between these wooden slats. You can make this any size you want, but I would say that above about 6 feet in diameter, it gets a little unwieldy to reach into here when you're throwing ingredients in.
And for many people, maybe this is too high to reach in, so you might want something shorter. How about this wire? This is just plastic-covered wire. It isn't as tall. You can cut pieces out of this, put them in a circle, and make your compost heap that way. But our favorite is to make it out of straw bales like this. It's certainly strong enough, and the bales are porous enough to let air enter. Now, it takes a year to make good compost, and so we have two heaps, one here that we're making, and one for the finished product.
And here it is. Oh, look at that great stuff. You can tell your compost is finished when it just looks like good, rich, fertile soil. You can't even distinguish the stuff that went into it before it broke down. Unless, of course, somebody's forgotten to chop up the old cabbage stems. There you go, Eliot.
Well, I guess we'll just have to put it back through the process again. One nice thing about the composting process is it's just that simple. Other than layering the ingredients in here in the order that we mentioned before, Barbara and I don't do any work. There are hundreds of billions of little microorganisms in here that are making it all happen. And all they require is a nice place to work and some warmth. Now, they take care of the warmth themselves. They give off heat in their process. The straw bales make it even better because they insulate the heap and keep it in there. Now, when I say heat, I mean some serious heat. It's about 35 degrees outside right now, but this thermometer inside the heap tells me that it's 108 degrees inside there. The bacteria are working. Now, once you start using compost to grow plants, whatever plants, whether it's your lawn or your flowers or your vegetables, it works so well, you're going to want more and more and more. And we make as much as we can. I wander out in the field next door and I cut old weeds. We layer them in there. Any ingredients we can find. In fact, another nice thing about the straw bale walls is that after a couple of years of acting as walls, the bales begin to decompose, and then they too become ingredients in the heap. When that happens, we just build another bale wall around the new heap. We'll show you how.
But first, Eliot, let's cover up this old one. We don't like rain to fall on the finished compost. It's not good for it. But, on the other hand, the new compost that we're working on needs to stay moist. So if it's a hot, dry spell in the middle of summer, go out and sprinkle it with a hose a little bit. That'll keep it cooking.
Right. Let's go make that heap.
Building the walls of a compost heap out of straw bales, it's just like building with big kids' building blocks.
In fact, it's just as much fun, sort of like building a fort. We've always found our children like to help out. Now, the heap we were working with before when we were building compost was made of 16 bales, 8 on the bottom layer, 8 on the top layer. This is a slightly smaller one, made of 12 bales, 6 on the bottom, 6 on the top.
You notice when we put these down, we're leaving a gap between bales. That's so more air can pass through, in addition to what's going through the straw itself.
Now, when you put the second layer on here, cross the bales over at the corners to lock them together, just the way you would if you were building a brick wall.
Now, we could just continue along with the second level of this heap, but on the other hand, leave the first one so that you can work in here a little more easily, and then when this is filled up, finish off with the second part.
So remember, however you make it, compost is the key. It's the magic ingredient that'll make everything in your garden grow better than you ever imagined.
Naturally.
One of my favorite tools is the traditional scythe. It's an old tool, as you can tell by the name, as this was known as the snath, and these are the nibs. This is the Swiss or German style. What has come to America is the English style where the nibs are out front. I prefer this one. There's a sign on the wall of a friend's shed where he keeps his scythes, and it says, "Sharp me when you put me up, sharp me when you find me, and if I will not mow the grass, take me off and grind me." Well, that reminds me that it's important to keep this sharp, and I do that with a file, either a traditional metal file or a diamond file like this, just passing slowly down the blade at the right angle and on both sides. Be careful when you do it that you don't get what's called a mower's knuckle by getting your knuckle in the way of that. Now, traditionally, sharpening was done with a whetstone. It was held in a little water-filled canister like this that you stuck on your belt. And you took it out and then made strokes, quick strokes like this down the blade. Usually I favor traditional techniques, but in this case, I can keep it sharper with a file, and that's the way I do it. How do you use this tool? Let's go up to the buckwheat patch, and I'll show you. There are two things to remember when using a scythe. First, it isn't a pendulum. If you lift it up like this, it's only cutting for a little bit when it's near the ground. You want to keep it near the ground the whole time and swing it in a smooth, circular motion, keep it low. Then it works best. The other thing to remember is, don't make a frontal attack. Don't try and cut all those stems at once. You want to use it like an end around. You're just going to nibble away, bit by bit, smooth, it cuts with that flowing motion, and then it works really, really nicely. I'm going to take this buckwheat to the compost heap, and eventually it'll fertilize the garden, which makes this tool anything but a grim reaper.
What we've shown you in this show is that soil fertility isn't something you can just go out and buy in the store. We try to understand fertile soil as a living system that nature maintains.
The forest you saw at the start of the show goes on year after year because it is constantly renewing itself. We've always found our best success in the garden by paying close attention to nature's patterns. That is the real secret.
Until next time, goodbye and good gardening.
Next on TLC, get started on easy home projects that anyone can handle here on Homebodies. Then indulge your creative side with Debbie Stapley on Crafts & Company here on TLC.